There are two final roles that women play in warfare that are also kind of hiding in plain sight. The first of these is an overlooked but critically important role for wives in wartime, and that was that of what might be called a deputy husband. When Rutherford B. Hayes, for example, he's shown at right, went off to war with the 23rd Ohio Volunteer Infantry Regiment in 1861, his wife, Lucy, on the left, assumed the burden of the business of the family as well as domestic decision making. And this was very common among the wives of officers and men alike. If there was a family business and the man ordinarily took care of the bookkeeping and determining what to buy and how much to buy, and with the wheeling and dealing and so forth, that role fell to the wife to handle. And you can see in letters that go back and forth between spouses, discussions about what to do, and sometimes arguments about what to do. And so, what Rutherford Hayes and Lucy Hayes went through was typical of what many soldiers and officers went through as well. And as women acquired more independence and sort of more knowledge and understanding and competence within the public sphere of things in this capacity as deputy husband, it often changed the dynamics of the marriage that they were in, sometimes in permanent respects that often outlasted the war. Finally, we have the phenomenon of the military wife, which is a woefully understudied topic that more than deserves a major scholarly study. Such wives have played an important, even indispensable role in advancing the military careers of their husbands. Here we see Libby Custer with her husband, the famed George Armstrong Custer of Civil War fame, and of course, the Battle of the Little Bighorn. Libby tirelessly lobbied for her husband's advancement and assiduously supported his career from one end to the other. Her identity centered on the career of her husband. And the expectation was that a military wife would devote herself to her husband's career. And this expectation was taken so deeply for granted that for decades, an officer's wife's demeanor was part of her husband's officer evaluation report. In other words, when a superior wrote his evaluation annually about an officer and how good this officer was or was not or whatever, the officer's wife would be taken into the equation. This is a good Army wife. This is a good supportive Army wife. This wife is not on board with the program. This kind of a thing. This literally was the case, and it remains taken for granted to this day that the wife, that if the husband is a company commander, then the wife plays the role of Mrs. Company Commander and supervises the social events among the officer husbands and wives within the company. And if the husband is a battalion commander, then the wife plays the role of Mrs. Battalion Commander and performs the same kind of function. And from what has come under my observation over the years, many military wives have almost no identity apart from their role as a military spouse. Now, that's not true for everyone. I have seen military wives who combine both roles. They are both supportive of their husbands as officers and as soldiers and have carved out a space for themselves in their own careers. But the expectation is that they're going to support their husband first and foremost. And there are even now books on how to be a military wife. This is just one of several, and you can see that it's gone through 4 editions. And now that women are also officers and high-ranking officers at that, Three of my students at the Army War College were bird colonels, all three of whom were considered to be likely to make general officer. So we have this phenomenon. So you would think, well, there's also the phenomenon of the military husband, but the roles are not symmetrical. The expectations are not symmetrical, partly because the role simply has not evolved. And partly because the husbands of female officers are frequently officers themselves. So the basic dynamics are different. Now, I want to conclude with a stanza from a poem by Margaret Atwood entitled The Loneliness of the Military Historian. And you probably heard the name Margaret Atwood because she's the novelist who famously wrote The Handmaid's Tale, among many other novels and books of poetry and so forth. She's quite a distinguished literary figure. And this poem is entitled The Loneliness of the Military Historian, in which she imagines being a female military historian as being little short of a pariah, because she deigns to study what women have no business studying. And notice how this stanza captures the stereotypes expected of women. They should not, as you see, contemplate war. They should stick to matters of hearth and home and avoid involving themselves in the politics of war. If they do involve themselves politically, they should march for peace. These are all manifestations of women as the beautiful soul. Or they should hand out white feathers to arouse bravery, thereby playing the role of instigator, another stereotype. Or they should willingly embrace the role of victim, yet another stereotype. These are the functions, she says, that inspire general comfort. These are the functions that society expects of women. And then Atwood moves back to aspects of the beautiful soul. She talks about knitting of socks for troops and a kind of moral cheerleading, also mourning the dead, sons, lovers, and so forth, all the killed children. In fact, as we have seen, the stereotypes that Margaret Atwood sort of rightly mocks in this poem do not begin to touch the roles that women have played during the early modern world and through the 19th century, still less the roles that they play today.